I'm Christelle from Diabetes Strong. In this video, I'll be letting you in on the biggest Dexcom mistakes I made when I started wearing my Dexcom CGM. I've been wearing a Dexcom CGM for about 6 years now. I started out with the Dexcom T5, and now I wear the Dexcom T6. And I've made a lot of mistakes. Nothing has been life-threatening, but there's been enough mistakes. At one point, I was seriously considering no longer wearing the device. So let me walk you through 4 Dexcom mistakes that I've made so that you can learn from me and not have to make the same mistakes. The first mistake is inserting the CGM sensor right before bed. Most sensors, actually all the sensors, are somewhat inaccurate, at least for the first 24 hours. And I can almost guarantee you that if you insert it right before bedtime, you'll be listening to CGM alarms all night rather than just sleeping. Not a lot of sleep, that's not a concept that I'm a fan of. And I've inserted it right before bed more than once, not thinking it through, only to have the alarms going all night long. It's been so bad that several times I've actually ended up turning off my phone completely, because that's where I get all my alerts, just to silence the device. You can, of course, silence your alerts. And I think that's a really, really good tip if you're going through alarm fatigue or if it's keeping you up all night. However, you cannot turn off the 55 milligrams per deciliter urgent low alarm. And I wouldn't necessarily want to turn that off. I want to be alerted if it's actually that low. However, when I get those all night blaring alarms, it's usually the 55 urgent low or even just low. When it's below that, that's blaring all night, even though my blood sugars are actually in a healthy range. So to conclude on this, I would not recommend that you start your CGM right before going to bed. The second mistake I've made is to insert the sensor when my blood sugars are fluctuating. So, for example, I do not recommend that you insert your sensor right after a meal. So when you insert it right after a meal, your blood sugars will fluctuate, and that seems to really confuse the sensor. And for me, it can become really inaccurate for a longer time. It just seems like it takes a little longer to calibrate. I found that I have the most accurate sensors when I insert the sensor in the afternoon. So that would be a few hours after lunch and a few hours before dinner. So I'll insert the sensor and I won't eat for at least 2 hours, which is the sensor warm-up period. The third mistake I made was to chase my high and lows. So when I first started wearing my CGM, I would react to every high or low that I saw on my device. And basically that led to an intense daily blood sugar roller coaster. So whenever I would see my blood sugar rise or drop, I would react without taking other things but my Dexcom into consideration. Now I stop and I pause and I think through the whole scenario. So let me give you an example. Let's say that my blood sugars are rising after a meal. So I see that rise on my Dexcom. Now I stop and I think, is this actually because I need more insulin, or is it more a question of an insulin and food timing issue? So let's say that I just had my meal, I did dose the right amount of insulin, right? But I might not have pre-bolused long enough, or it might be a high glycemic meal. So I'll see it shoot up on my Dexcom, but I do have the right amount of insulin on board. So just thinking that through means I won't inject more because I technically know that I have enough insulin on board. I just need to wait it out and let the insulin do its job, and I'll see the blood sugar come down again. Back in the beginning of wearing my Dexcom, I would not have thought through the whole scenario. I was just seeing the blood sugar shoot up and I would have reacted by throwing more insulin at it. That would have led to low blood sugar, which then need to be treated with carbohydrates, and there comes the roller coaster. Another example is when I see my blood sugars dropping rapidly. In the beginning, I would freak out. Honestly, I would freak out and I would eat something right away. Now, I have a bit more of a relaxed approach to it. So let's say I have a blood sugar of 100 milligrams per deciliter, 120, and arrow down. In the beginning, I would freak out. Now I think through the whole scenario. So am I dropping because of activity? Is it a food meal timing issue? Is it the type of insulin that I'm taking? So what's actually going on? What I'm referring to when I talk about different types of insulin is specifically that I use a rapid-acting insulin called Afrezza. It's an inhaled insulin. I'll leave a link to that up here if you want to learn more. And it just works way faster than your injected rapid-acting insulins. That means I often see 2 arrows down, but I won't go low. It's just because it works that fast in the system. Obviously, you want to react if you're at 80 milligrams per deciliter with 2 arrows down, or if you feel low. But generally, I won't react, I won't eat more just based on the arrows on my Dexcom. Always stop, think it through, and if I'm positive that I have too much insulin on board for whatever activity I'm doing or for the food I've eaten, if I have too much insulin on board, then I'll eat more. This strategy of thinking through the whole scenario, not only focusing on the Dexcom readings, have really helped me get off the blood sugar roller coaster. And quite frankly, getting off that roller coaster is one of the reasons why I no longer want to throw my Dexcom out the window. The fourth and final mistake I want to highlight here is that in the beginning, I was relying 100% on my CGM readings. Big mistake. The two main reasons why that was a big mistake was that one, as I mentioned up front, the Dexcom sensor or any other of the sensors can be fairly inaccurate, especially the first 24 hours. So doing any dosing decisions, just 100% based on the Dexcom, can be a big mistake. You should still do the finger sticks. And secondly, you should not rely only on your CGM whenever your blood sugars are fluctuating. So that means if they're rising or they're dropping fairly quickly. Think about it like this. Your CGM is measuring your blood sugars in the fluid. The fluid is about 10 minutes behind the actual blood. Furthermore, Dexcom only updates its readings every 5 minutes. That means you can technically be looking at a reading on your Dexcom that's 15 minutes behind your blood sugar. So again, when blood sugar is fluctuating, it might not have caught up. If your blood sugars are stable, that's a different story. So I always bring my meter with me, and I probably rely on my Dexcom about 80% of the time. But I'm very conscious about the fact that I cannot be relying on it 24/7, 100% of the time. And those were the 4 biggest mistakes I've made when it comes to my Dexcom CGM. Hopefully now that you know what I know, you won't make the same mistakes. If you like this video, please click the like button below and leave me a comment. Let me know, is there anything about your Dexcom CGM or any other brand of CGM for that matter that you think we all should know? Also, if you like my content, please click that subscribe button. Remember to turn on notifications to be informed whenever I post new content. Thank you so much for watching.